The courtroom at the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., was thick with tension as Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, stepped through the heavy wooden doors. She held the leash of Bruno, a German shepherd with a long, jagged scar along his left flank. Every eye in the room followed her as she walked forward, her steps both firm and cautious. Bruno, calm but vigilant, moved steadily beside her, ears perked as if detecting something no one else could. Karoline was no ordinary witness. She was overseeing the trial of Victor Grayson, a former Pentagon official suspected of espionage. Her role was to protect national security, but she sensed there was more to uncover, something others had missed. Judge Daniel Harper, a seasoned legal veteran, studied Karoline with a piercing gaze. Across the courtroom, Victor Grayson sat at the defendant's table, his expression composed, almost smug. At 50, he had once been an unremarkable military analyst, but now he faced charges of selling classified U.S. military information to China. The case against him lacked physical evidence or a confession, and his defense team was prepared to dismantle every accusation. Karoline, however, had prepared her own strategy. As she took her seat, her sharp green eyes locked onto Grayson's, and she made a subtle, nearly imperceptible gesture, a secret signal only Bruno would recognize. Bruno's reaction was immediate. His body stiffened, muscles coiling like a spring, his ears perking up, his golden-brown eyes locked onto Grayson with unwavering intensity. A low growl rumbled from his chest, sending a chill through the room. The murmurs in the courtroom rippled through the onlookers. Judge Harper, sensing something extraordinary, slammed his gavel. "Court is recessed for 15 minutes, he declared, his voice edged with urgency. Prosecutor Anna Reynolds exchanged a questioning glance with the judge, but he offered no explanation. Something significant had just happened, and he needed time to process it. Outside in the hallway, Karoline knelt beside Bruno, her fingers gripping his fur tightly. Her mother, Margaret Leavitt, bent down next to her, brushing Karoline's hair from her face with trembling hands. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she whispered. Karoline didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Her grip on Bruno tightened, her body pressing against him for comfort. A few steps away, FBI agent Ethan Brooks observed the moment carefully. A seasoned investigator, Brooks had a gut instinct that had cracked countless cases. Now, that same instinct told him that Bruno had picked up on something critical. He turned to Judge Harper. "I bet my badge that dog found something on Grayson," he said. Harper exhaled slowly, his deep blue eyes narrowing. "Then we need to find out what it is." In the defendant's private holding room, Victor Grayson sat across from his lawyer, Thomas Reed. The smugness he had worn throughout the trial had vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating edge. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the wooden table. He replayed the moment in court over and over. Karoline hadn't said a word, but that dog, Bruno, had reacted. Grayson's mind raced. Had she figured something out? "She knows something," he muttered under his breath. Reed raised an eyebrow. "What?" Grayson forced a tight smile. "Nothing," he lied, but inside, he was unraveling. "That damn dog." As the 15-minute recess ended, the courtroom filled again, the tension even thicker than before. Prosecutor Anna Reynolds stepped forward, presenting evidence that Grayson had communicated with Chinese operatives. She laid out a series of documents, but Thomas Reed immediately objected. "Speculation," he said coolly. "No recordings, no photos, just unreliable sources." Karoline tilted her head slightly as she watched Grayson. She saw it, his fists clenched subtly at the mention of recordings. That was it. Without hesitation, she tapped her fingers lightly on the table, the secret signal she and Bruno had practiced. Bruno sprang into action, ears erect, sniffing rapidly, then bolted toward the defendant's table. The courtroom gasped. A deep growl rumbled from Bruno's chest as he sniffed around Grayson's chair, eyes fixed on something beneath the table. The murmurs swelled. Judge Harper banged his gavel. "What is happening, Miss Leavitt?" he demanded. Karoline stood, her voice calm but cutting. "Your Honor, Bruno is trained to detect listening devices. I believe there's something in this room that we haven't seen." FBI agent Ethan Brooks moved swiftly, kneeling beside Bruno and reaching under the table. His fingers closed around something small and metallic. He held it up for the courtroom to see, a tiny, blinking device. "It's a listening device," Brooks announced. The courtroom erupted in shock. Grayson's face drained of color. His hands trembled. Judge Harper slammed his gavel. "Court is adjourned for an immediate sweep of the courtroom," he declared, his gaze locked onto Grayson. Anna Reynolds turned to Karoline with a mixture of awe and admiration, while Thomas Reed whispered frantically to his client. Karoline remained still, her hand resting on Bruno's head, her expression unreadable. What followed was a whirlwind of revelations. Investigators traced the device's transmissions to a warehouse in rural Virginia. When a team led by Ethan Brooks raided the site, they found classified Pentagon documents hidden in a safe, alongside encrypted files detailing military secrets sold to China. The evidence was undeniable. The next morning, in court, Anna Reynolds confronted Grayson with the hard drive containing his entire espionage network. "How do you explain this?" she demanded. For the first time, Grayson showed fear. He stammered, scrambling for an answer, but the walls had closed in. Then, as if sealing his fate, Bruno once again locked eyes with him and let out a deep, low growl. The courtroom held its breath. Grayson's confidence shattered. He turned to his lawyer and whispered something frantically. Then, louder, he said, "I want to change my plea." The room erupted into chaos. Victor Grayson was sentenced to life without parole. The case that once seemed impossible to prove had been cracked, thanks to Karoline and Bruno. As the verdict was read, Karoline knelt beside Bruno, stroking his head. "Thank you," she whispered. He wagged his tail, pressing against her. The courtroom had seen many battles, but this time the hero had 4 legs.